Speaking about this Russian propaganda, as you mentioned, the Russians, they keep trying to draw attention to the Volynia massacre and other dark episodes, or they're trying to push to Ukrainians that the Poles are only helping you because they want to take back Lviv or Lvov. So these are the narratives that are certainly spun by the Russians, but there are many of these propaganda strategies that they use. For example, we remember at the start of the war, they were talking about that the invasion happened because the Ukrainians, they had intensified their artillery shelling of the Donbas area, and that after 8 long years of Ukrainian shelling, now this increase simply forced Vladimir Putin to invade Ukraine. We remember in India, Russia's foreign minister Sergei Lavrov said that this was the war that had been started by Ukraine and that they had only been forced, and people were laughing in the audience. Lavrov looked a bit shocked that people had the audacity to
not everyone is as schizophrenic as Russian leadership. Really wonderful.
But looking at these Russian lies, because there are so many, it's difficult to keep up with them. But when you then read that people in America or in Canada or in France, that they repeat this, that they say, oh, there were biolabs in Ukraine, for example. How does this make Ukrainians feel when, for Ukrainians, it's so obvious that this is just very basic propaganda, but somehow in the West, a lot of people fall for it, and in the third world, even worse.
We should give Russians some credit. Their propaganda machine has been working very efficiently, even though it's absolute nonsense. Many people are quite eager to believe in some simple explanations to all of their troubles, and they're very much drawn to conspiracy theories. So this is exactly the type of people Russian propaganda is targeting. People who are uneducated, people who don't really know how the world is structured, and honestly, none of us knows fully. Is the more outrageous the lie, the easier it is to believe in it, because it just can't be that all of this is made up. So all these biolabs, some relation to COVID, some Khazarias, some anything Aryans, first sons, like somehow this absolute nonsense is being woven together. And unfortunately, there are still many uneducated people who like to fall for these things. And as people who are looking into the future and who want to live in a civilized, technologically advanced societies, we need to understand that those propagandas are quite efficient, and we unfortunately have to be much more entrepreneurial in creating our own counter-propaganda. And I don't think Ukraine has done a very good job in this, specifically before the war. Now it's getting a bit better, but it's nearly not enough to counter what Russia has been doing for decades across the world, especially in Africa, as you're saying.
Speaking about this propaganda and the online war for narratives, some of the help that Ukraine has received has been done by these idealists that have been volunteering. I'm talking here about the so-called NAFO army, the NAFO fellas, that some of them say that you are somehow in contact with, or that they support you.
Oh, I'm a proud NAFO felina, absolutely.
How would you describe their role in this war since the start of the full-scale invasion?
So what I see, the NAFO people who are in this movement are actually very different people. They have different views on lots of political topics, lots of social topics. They're united basically by one thing: by helping Ukraine win, by supporting democracy and freedom. So in this, I think it's one of the best movements that has been created in this war, absolutely decentralized and absolutely voluntarily. So we like joking how we are all sponsored by CIA and redacted, and how we're training some fighter geese and squirrel and so on. But I mean, the more outrageous and silly things we're saying, the more irritating it is to Russian propagandists who are pushing these absolutely crazy narratives. Yeah, I think NAFO has been amazing and also very efficient in uncovering lots of these paid Russian propagandists, uncovering what they are, where they live, how they're being funded by Russia, and putting all these things apart and showing how actually stupid and limited these people are. So NAFO has been very, very useful and very helpful for Ukraine.
And then a final question. How do you think Russian society will cope with this war? Is there a certain breaking point when enough body bags return to Russia that they could break? What do you think about the future for the Ukrainians? Will the spirit to keep fighting back still be there for the coming months or even years if this war would drag on? And finally, what do you think about the future of Western support? Are the societies, whether in the US or in London or anywhere else in Europe, are they prepared to fight a long war in the terms that they are simply helping Ukraine with enough material?
In the early stages of the war, I honestly wouldn't be so sure that the Western politicians and the support would have been even there if Ukrainians haven't shown that they want to live and they want to fight. So once Ukrainians have chosen their path and chosen to fight till the end, till the victory, then it has been actually the people in the West, the populations of England, Germany, America, that decided that this is the fight of the whole humanity, that they have the moral obligation to support, because Ukraine now, today, is representing the fight of democracy and the fight for freedom, which we all embody. So I would say that I wouldn't be talking about politicians individually, but I would be talking about populations and average people across the world, and I'm sure they will be with Ukraine till our victory, because this is the fight of all of us. Now, talking about Russia, yes, as you mentioned, I have studied international relations and history, and I have quite some understanding about the Russian mentality. And I know that Second World War has been won in their understanding very gloriously and brightly by Russia, mainly by their propaganda. However, it has been won at the expense of about 70 million people who died in Soviet Union. This has been the slaughter of the planetary scale, and Russians went through this, and they think it has been great that they are boasting of the number of people that were slaughtered in this time. Firstly, because the war was so horrible. Secondly, because the Russian leadership has killed all the capable generals. So there was no one to actually lead this war that Nazis waged against Soviets. So I think they can go on with this for years, and they can see many more millions people die. So nothing will come out of Russia, and I don't think this war will be stopped in Russia.
Because at the same time, there are those that point to 1917, for example, that the revolution happened due to big war losses. There was also the famous movement of grieving mothers after the Afghanistan war, after the first Chechen war. But so far, these grieving mothers, we have not really seen them.
Yeah, they're somewhere there, and they demand more Ukrainians to be killed.
Yeah,
so
unfortunately.
They have their own vision. It's interesting when we are talking about some kind of Russian imperialism or some Russian pride. these whole concepts are so misplaced when we are literally just talking about the enslaved nation that are fighting for their little human being who is just exploiting their nation, and that they kind of like it. It's some kind of a strange, perversive BDSM relationship between this leader and the nation. So thinking that some kind of great revolt can come out of there, it has to be done externally. And I think the West will have to step in, because Russians will not have any limit on their patience and any limit on the number of their people they can see in the body bags. So
what about the Ukrainians then? The final question. What do you think? Will they be able to withstand coming months or even years if it needs to be?
I should probably be saying yes, but I'm also a realist, and I don't think we have such a disregard for human life as Russians. So if the West doesn't step in with appropriate amount of weapons, with allowing us to fight this war on our own terms, and with sending more people, the boots on the ground, honestly, I don't know if Ukraine can withstand these millions of hordes of slaves coming to just kill and loot. But I think the West should also understand very clearly that if Ukraine falls, the situation for them will get much, much worse. And it's not a surprise that Poland will be next, at least based on Russian rhetorics. This is one thing. Secondly, of course, whenever we are complaining about cost of life crisis and so on, we don't really think what kind of inflation and cost of life we will have to experience if Ukraine falls, or if there is a nuclear disaster in South Ukraine and Africa starts starving massively and all these millions of immigrants start coming to Europe. So I think it's very much in the West's interest to up their game as soon as possible and make sure Ukraine doesn't.
So to sum up, we could say that in the coming months, the weapon deliveries need to increase massively if this war is to be won as swiftly as possible.
And obviously it will be in all of our interest, especially in the interest of Poland and Baltic nation, to defeat Russia as soon as possible, and ideally on Ukrainian land, if we don't want to deal with them in EU.
Thank you very much, Kate, and we hope to have you back in the future.
Thanks, Adam, and thank you for inviting me.